Hello, and welcome to Nourish and Navigate Healing Conversations. I'm Kathy Bolin, and I am so glad you stopped by. Here is where all kinds of healthy conversations happen, where some personal and difficult heart-to-heart discussions take place around life struggles. Stories of faith, hope, resiliency, and the work of God will nourish your soul and help you navigate through this journey we call life. It may not always be a bed of roses here, but this is where I want voices to be heard, stories to be told, and healing to begin. Through faith, laughter, and even some tears, we can connect with each other knowing we are not alone on this hike through life. There is no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside you. Maya Angelou. And if you are open to bold, honest conversations, then this is the place for you. Welcome to Nourish and Navigate Healing Conversations. I am so excited to introduce my friend, Krista Wetzler. Krista and I go back many years where we attended church together, both with very young children at the time who are now grown and out in the world. And Krista is a devoted wife and a mom to 5 boys. I can't imagine that. And a Gammy to 3 granddogs. Krista works full-time as a family support specialist with healthy families, working one-on-one with moms and their young children. Krista is passionate about health and wellness and empowering women to be the best version of themselves in whatever season they are in by honoring the body that God has given them. But for Krista, that has not come easy to her. After surviving a sudden cardiac arrest at 44 years of age, she has walked a healing journey, spiritually, mentally, and physically. As we listen to Krista share her story of survival, it is our hope that you will clearly see that God is not done writing her story. Welcome to the podcast, Krista, and I so appreciate you joining me today. I've been really excited about today and the opportunity to hear this amazing story.
Thank you for having me.
I'm excited. I think this is just going to be such an amazing story for people to hear because I know your heart and I know your passion in all of this. And I just thought it was interesting when I reached out to you that you made the comment that you promised God that if anybody ever asked you to share your story, you would say yes.
Yes.
And just think that is amazing. It still gives me goosebumps when I think about it. So, well, let's start.
An amazing little story of how like obedience and then just the randomest people will reach out. And that was just kind of how it was with you. It's like, haven't talked in a long time and you reach out to me and I'm like, the answer is yes. And we're going to go from there.
There you go. That sounds, it's amazing. So my first question for you today, Krista, is can you take us back to the story of your cardiac arrest or to the day of your cardiac arrest and share what you remember about that moment?
Okay. So I would say first off that I don't remember much. But I have a lot of like what was leading up to that day on that day. And the crazy thing is I totally see now how it was God's protection over myself because I literally had what they call like ICU amnesia, and I don't remember anything. And so basically a lot of what I'm going to share in my story of that day is what people have told me. And who was there or my family. And so my journey of healing and remembering things comes after 6 days of being in ICU.
Wow.
And so that day was a normal day for me. I was a home daycare provider at the time and working a full day. I had went that morning to work out like I do every day. And so I worked out then worked all day in my home alone with a bunch of little babies. And afterwards we were having like a going away party at Chuck E. Cheese for one of the little ones that was moving away. And so everybody came and picked up their kids, and the plan was that we would all meet over at Chuck E. Cheese. And so we did. And I get there, and that day I felt perfectly fine. There wasn't a moment in my memory now to say that there was something that was telling me something was wrong. And I totally see the Lord's protection over me that I was working all day alone with these
Wow.
babies. And so we get to Chuck E. Cheese, and within 30 minutes on my phone, you'll see a picture of me that I took of three of the little girls that were with us. So I was there with all the daycare's kids and their parents. So it was like 6 or 7 families and their moms and dads. And so I took this picture and then stood up, and again, this is what they are telling me. So you can see on my phone that I took a picture at like 3:44 p.m. And literally I stood up, and then I collapsed and started convulsing. And you know, what appeared, like they said, it looked like I might have been having a seizure, which is not part of my anything in my health, or that's not something that I was diagnosed with having before, but that's what it looked like at first. And then I completely like just stopped. And so they went into really quick action and got all the kids away, and called 911. And praise God, the EMT fire station is literally almost directly behind Chuck E. Cheese.
Oh, wow.
And they got there, and they thought that they had heard on the 911 call that it was a 4-year-old, not a 40-year-old. And I was 44 at the time. And so they were prepared to see a child, thinking a child was having a seizure. And when they arrived, they see an adult woman who was completely non-responsive.
Oh, wow.
And so they immediately, because CPR was not performed on me at that point. And so when they arrived, they performed CPR on me and had to shock me 3 times to get my heart to start beating again. And took me to Centera, where they started running lots of tests and everything. And at this point, they still did not know what was wrong. And because I took a picture, like I want to put little God stories in all of this, because this is truly his miracle story anyway. Um, because I took a picture of those girls on my phone, my phone was unlocked. And so one of the daycare providers, one of the daycare parents was able to find my husband's number in my phone because it was unlocked. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been able to get a hold of him. And the funny little story behind that, real quick, is that I call my husband Big Red, and in my phone it says Big Red. And her little girl one day was like, "Mommy, Miss Krista calls Mr. Steve Big Red. When she talks to him in the car and tells her car to call Mr. Steve, it says call Big Red." And
Oh,
so she just kind of laughed it off and was like, "Okay, yeah, don't you want to tell me all Miss Krista's little secrets or whatever?" And but
because
that
we
was
know kids can talk, right?
right, they can talk. And that was months before this event. And because I took the picture, and because that sweet little angel baby that was like 2 years old told her mom that I call him Big Red, she knew to look in my phone under Big Red,
That's crazy.
and was able to call my husband, who was 45 minutes away at work. But so another parent rode with me in the ambulance to the ER. And so get to the ER and they start running all the tests. They put me in ICU in an induced coma. They medically induced coma and started running tests on my brain, MRIs, different things, trying to see if it was seizures. Everything was coming back fine. And so they did a heart cath and found out that I had a 98% blockage in my right LAD, which is what they call a widowmaker.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And so they immediately sent me over to Centera Heart Hospital and like a transport. And there they put, and so this was like day 5 that it took, like going through all the tests and different things. And so they sent me over to Centera and they put a stent in, and 24 hours later sent me home. And at that point, when I was actually signing papers for discharge and stuff, is when I was like, what's happening? So it was that point when I started realizing what had actually happened to me. But my husband and family are like blown away by that because once they pulled me out of an induced coma, I was talking just like this with everybody. I was on like a very emotional roller coaster. I kept telling my family they were punking me, like, you're punking me. I'm not supposed to be in the hospital. Nothing's wrong with me. And I was like literally hooked up to all these machines and I was just like, what's going on? So I was having full-fledged conversations with people, but I have zero memory of any of it.
How that's just such a protective, God protects, the brain, he created that brain, right? And so
Right.
there's just so much in there to say about how we get protected, for the time that we need it, right?
Right.
To
My
do that.
brain, like it was like true rest, and my instinct is always to control things. And God totally knew that like I did not need to be, and I needed to just rest and allow this body to heal and for them to figure out what was wrong with me instead of me telling them that I was fine, basically.
Right, right.
So then, yes, so I just like had the stent put in and literally was sent home, and that's when really the healing journey began. But the cardiologist tells me that only 6% of people survive sudden cardiac arrest outside of the hospital. And so it gives me just complete chills and just the understanding the miraculous power that God performed on my life to know that I was one of those 6%. And that, it just continues to just remind me that every day is a gift. And so we have to honor that. And but this journey after being discharged from the hospital was really where the healing began.
I can imagine. Now, how much are you getting any memory back of anything, or still just what people are telling you?
So it is still just what people are telling me.
Okay.
It took, I decided once I was okay, and because I appeared to have a seizure like at first, and I did not, they took driving away from me for 6 months.
Okay.
And so I had to depend on so many people, and um, and I'll touch on some of the community stuff in a little bit. But as far as my memory goes, I wanted to like almost retrace, like when I started this healing journey, I wanted to understand like what had happened. And I didn't like, so like I can look at that picture on my phone and I do not remember taking it. I don't even remember being in Chuck E. Cheese. I remember leaving my house that day to go, but I don't remember being there at all. And so literally that's where my amnesia
Right.
starts.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I want to go to, and I wasn't sure at first what my motive, and I think my family was really worried as to why did I wanted to go back to the hospital, and I wanted to go and kind of see if I remembered anything, because it's really, really hard to mentally, physically, my body was healing and doing well. But mentally, I just couldn't grasp this concept that this traumatic, very serious thing that I literally was brought back from death
Mm.
happened to me. And I have no memory of why, how, what, like, and that I was in the hospital for 6 days and I have no memory of it, and I have no memory of anything. And so they kept telling me that I had this phenomenal ICU nurse. And as God would have it, she had to cover shifts for 2 extra days. And she was literally my ICU nurse every day. And to this day, we have the most amazing relationship, because she was so compassionate and caring and such a wonderful nurse, according to
Mhm.
everybody else. Like,
Right.
I'm like, everybody talked about this lady, and so I was like, I need to go thank her. I wanted to thank the EMTs. I wanted to thank, the nurse. I just wanted to make sure that they knew that they were the hands and feet of Jesus, and they were an instrument that he used, to perform this miracle and to, take care of me and take good care of me. And so anyway, I go to the ICU. Well, I go to the EMTs and meet them, and thank them, and then I go to the ICU and to meet this nurse. And so they take us back to this room, and she comes in and she like gives me a hug, and I'm crying, and she starts crying because she's like, I don't always see this outcome. And
Right.
she only saw me sick. She only saw me close to death,
Mm.
laying in that ICU bed. And then to see me standing there looking healthy and fine, was very overwhelming for both of us. But she hugged me and she whispered in my ear that it was so good to see me. And it was an immediate, like, I know you. I know that voice.
Right.
But I could not picture her. I didn't have any visual memory of her, but it was something about her voice. And it was because she literally took such great care of me. And I could remember her talking over me, but I don't remember anything she said.
That's, as a nurse of 40 years, and I was an ICU nurse for a while too. And so I can appreciate her sentiment of,
Mhm.
seeing that positive outcome, as
Yes.
well. But it's interesting, that you talk about recognizing her voice,
Mhm.
because there is research out there. I mean, information out there that people in the comas and things like that can still hear, the voices. And I remember as a nurse myself in ICU and having patients in the coma, that always encouraging the family to
Yes.
to talk, to their loved one and do all that.
Mhm.
So I just think that's
Yes,
so
I would
amazing.
definitely say if you're ever in a situation where you have a family member and that kind of situation that you constantly talk, and the environment in the room, and make it as worshipful and as honoring as you can, and take all the stress out of the room, because it just shows how much, like, that was probably part of my healing, of just that
Right.
calmness in the room,
Yeah.
that was
a-
created.
Absolutely.
So as that is all I remember of any of it. And so they'll tell me all the different things that I did, and all the tests that were done, and just all that different stuff, but I don't have any memory of any of that.
Oh, well, I mean, it's probably just as well in some regards, right? Just,
Mhm. Absolutely.
just for that protection. Um, we talked earlier about some of the questions, and I'm going to throw this question out of order,
Okay.
because you've alluded to it a little bit, I think, in what you did the day of. the cardiac arrest. And so, um, tell us a little bit about your relationship with your health and well-being um, prior to this event. And again, this isn't meant to like scare people, but when we talked pre-podcast, you really attributed that relationship to your
Mhm.
healing.
Yes.
So talk a little bit about that.
Yes. I always say that when I share this story that I never want it to be a story that even focuses on cardiac arrest because that can be so scary. It's such a scary word. Hello, I lived it, and I'm
Yeah.
like, it's a very, very scary and traumatic thing. And when I talk about it, I have to say that I didn't have any symptoms. I didn't have any um, precursors. I wasn't being treated for anything. I had no clue that this was going to obviously happen or even remotely maybe happen. Like I said, I was working out and I was healthy. And I'll say this that the doctor has since told me that after I had the cardiac arrest, because I was like, why? How did this happen? What was wrong? And he said that, a lot of people have a small percentage of plaque buildup, like, in their arteries. And so I did not know I did. And he was like very small amount. And a piece, when you have sudden cardiac arrest, a piece of it can break off and immediately just clog that artery, and that's what stops your heart. And so that's basically what happened to me, as a piece just broke off. Nothing, I didn't have anything happen to me physically that made like a hit, or nothing made me. It just did. It
Mhm.
just did. It's kind of the only
Yeah.
thing we can go to. Um, and a week prior, I had a physical, my yearly physical, and had all my lab work done. And while I'm in ICU, they leave a message on my phone, and it says, "Your lab work looks wonderful. Come back in a year."
Oh,
And
wow.
my husband's like, yeah, well, she's in ICU and just had sudden cardiac arrest. Like, and so it can be scary to hear that, because some people can internalize that as like, oh no, what do I need to be worried about and stuff. And what I want most out of what you hear from my story is that we have a responsibility for our bodies, and that is to honor and glorify God. And part of that is taking care of our bodies. And so if I were to go back 10 years before I had sudden cardiac arrest, I was climbing a mountain with my family, and we were in Georgia, Kennesaw Mountain, if anybody's ever heard of Kennesaw Mountain. And we got lost up on the mountain. It was like 100 degrees, and I was 70 pounds overweight. And I was done. And I sat down. I'm like, I'm not going any further. And I had five boys that were like all little, running around, and they were getting whiny and fussy, and everybody was miserable. But I was like, I physically cannot keep going. And my husband's like, you don't have a choice. We have to get to the bottom of the
Got to
mountain.
get down.
Get up and put your big girl pants on and get down this mountain with me with these kids. And so anyway, that was like a pivotal moment in my life. It was a a moment where I just decided that enough was enough. That my boys are like boom, 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 boom. So they're like, and so I just was so busy taking care of everybody else. I was just, barely keeping my head above water with everything boys. And I just decided that I did not ever want to have a moment in my life where I could not keep up with my family or my kids. that I wanted to be active with my boys for as long as I possibly could. And in order for me to do that, I needed to take care of the body that God had given me.
Right.
And so I just started being a multitasking mama. And so while they're at baseball practice, I walked around the field and I just started walking and walking, which then eventually led to running, which then led to like 3 half marathons, you know, healthy eating, changing my diet and losing 70 pounds. And it just kind of just put this desire in me that health and wellness was important. And I needed to make sure that I was doing as much as I could for my body to make it as strong and as healthy as possible. Really, the intention was to keep up with my kids.
Right.
Little did I know what was going to be part of my story. Um, And so, because of that, because I decided to make those changes and just continue on a daily basis of moving my body in some sort of way and eating as healthy as I can, like most of the time, I my doctor says that my heart muscle was strong. And that is what needs to be the focus, is
Yeah.
that if it wasn't for my heart muscle being strong and the choices and the things that I had put into place in my life, the outcome could have been totally different. And he reminded me ever so gently of that,
Right.
you know. And then afterwards, I had to go to cardiac rehab because that's just part of it. And I was like, looking around, like there's all these like very much older people, and I'm like, it was very hard. Like, why am I here? I don't need to be here. But because again, I didn't remember what my body had went through. I didn't feel anything. I
Hmm.
didn't feel pain. I didn't feel all the things that I went through. So it was hard, a hard comprehension. And so in cardiac rehab, they would have to tell me to slow down. I would be on the bike or on the treadmill and they're like, Krista, slow down. Like, and I'm like, oh my gosh, because my heart rate was getting up and they're
Uh-huh.
monitoring it. And so anyway, that just was like that cardiac rehab team put a fuel in my fire to just keep moving and to keep that I was going to be safe. It was kind of like this little cushion I needed to know that when I moved my body, I was going to be okay,
Right.
like that nothing, was going to happen to me because I didn't know that was going to happen to me and there was nothing I did. It's like it could happen at any given moment.
Hmm.
And so I think it's important to know that making good, healthy choices in your life now, today, is preparation for something that may be coming your way in the future. And it could just be running around with your grandkids. It's not saying you're going to have some serious health issue come
Hmm.
up, but we want to be able to move our bodies for as long as we can.
Right.
And the only way we can do that is by starting today and start moving and start, walking, start doing something. It doesn't have to be some running a half marathon.
Right. 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 But I think it just resonates with the fact that, taking care of yourselves, taking care of this body that you're given, because we're only given one, right? Um, does so much for, like you said, not necessarily this type of event, right?
Right.
But anything,
Yeah.
anything. The stronger that you are, I mean, we know health issues come up, right?
Hmm.
At any given point, be it a cardiac arrest, be it cancer, be it anything. And so we just kind of need to have a strong foundation to battle through those things and to get
Right.
through those things. So, and I think that's the point, or that I think that we wanted to share was, not to um, impart any fear, but
Sure.
just that
Yes.
there are things that are out of our control. But the thing that we can control or work on is taking care of our body, right?
Right. And you know that even if movement isn't necessary, like you have to do that every day or something, or some sort of vigorous workout or anything like that. But just even what you're putting in your body
Right.
is
Right.
important. And
Right.
it's really the most, moving your body and what you're putting in your body. Like, so like if you just make simple changes in your diet and
Mhm.
your nutrition, and just be conscious of that. And I always say, never beat yourself up over eating the piece of cake, but what is your next best choice? What
Right.
is the
Exactly.
next thing you're going to do?
Right.
And so just always kind of remembering that, you know, what you're putting into your body needs to be thought out. It's a process of thinking and preparing what you're putting in and how you're moving it. So it's like a free will of choices.
Yeah.
Like, and are you going to make those choices? And in the end, you're honoring your body that God has given you, and you're preparing your body for what God has next in store for you. And those are usually good things. Like,
Yeah.
let's not think of like all the sickness or anything that might happen, because yes, those are true, but God has so many good things in store for
Yeah.
us too, to be able to do. And so we want to be able to have the body to do those things. And
Yeah.
even rest is important. So
Absolutely.
resting your body. So those are just kind of like some things I would want to empower um, women and men to know, is just what you put in your body is important, how you move your body, how you rest your body, and is in preparation for what all the things God has in store for you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, so let's finish this last part, and we might be able to combine these two questions, I think, a little bit together. So surviving the sudden cardiac arrest, we know that that's a very rare, obviously a very profound experience, right? How has this event reshaped your perspective on life and your priorities? And you could probably speak, and I know you can speak it because I know how we've talked or whatever, is that how has this also um, changed your relationship with God, like your faith? How has that been impacted and transformed? And I think those things kind of all go together.
Mhm.
So
Mhm. Okay.
share with us on that.
So one of the things that I think is part of my healing journey was a lot of the mental and the spiritual. Um, so I'll hit a little bit on the mental well-being first. That emotional. I had a lot of fear and anxiety, and just scared that it was going to happen again. And I'd feel a little twinge in my chest or something, and be like, "Oh no," And so I had to go to counseling. Like, I think it's important for people to understand that there's not this taboo against counseling. Counseling is so good. And so I sought out a Christian counselor, and she just poured into me, and we did a EDMR, which is helps with like post like a traumatic. She said I had a traumatic situation, and so it's like PTSD almost, and it deals with that. And so we went through this whole process, and it was basically removing that fear from my brain, like really taking time. And so the way she did it was we took out the negative, and then she spoke the word over me. She spoke scripture over me during those sessions. And it was probably one of the most impactful things I could ever have gone through, as far as having just somebody speak that word over you. And it honestly healed me from the fear of having sudden cardiac arrest again. It really took that, because, and I was honestly scared that the things that she was going to do were going to bring back some memory of those 6 days, but it didn't. We just put in the things that I was holding on to as fear, things that I knew, like, because I have to take medication now. And,
Right.
there's all kinds of things that are new for me. And so just the whole process of that. So so mentally, I think has been the journey for me. That has really been the journey to healing and just hope, having that hope. And so taking every day as the best day it can be, like making sure that I'm living life to the fullest each day. And sure, I have days where it just kind of stink, and I have to really push myself and work really hard to find the joy, or I think that's all of us
Right.
when life hits us, because just because I had sudden cardiac arrest, that doesn't mean my life stopped with that, and that's the
Right.
only other anything that's ever going to happen to me. But I think moving into the spiritual part of that I am so thankful that I have a relationship with Jesus,
Yes.
and that me and my family had that hope, and we had a community of people praying over me. And I am amazed at how even social media can be used for such good.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times that gets a negative rap,
Right.
and I'm telling you what, like, because I was tagged in so much stuff during that time, I learned a lot about my journey just through social media, because my story was being shared so people would pray for me. And then it was just being blown, it was just going everywhere. And so the power of prayer and community, the amount of people that came to the ICU waiting room, they were camped out. Like my family they actually had to ask my family, like ask people to leave. Like,
Oh,
and
wow. Wow.
they were feeding the entire ICU floor. Like people from our church and my community of friends, they were feeding the ICU floor. And I contributed that all to just the love of God and community
Yeah.
is so, so important. And if it wasn't for that, I'm not sure where my faith, and I know that I would have probably come back to a good standing with God, but I never got angry with him. I never was like, I mean, sure, I questioned why did this happen, but I never was like, I'm so mad at you
Mm-hmm.
to God, because I just saw so much good. I cannot explain the good that came from it. And sudden cardiac arrest is a hard thing to say, and I would never want that on anybody. But if everybody would just take the blinders off and just see and around and see how God weaved all these details into place, and then the love of God through community and stuff that came from it.
Mm-hmm.
And I can remember being at home by myself when I was healing and I couldn't work yet. I wasn't working. I was taking this time, and my family like hovered over me like you wouldn't believe.
Yeah.
Okay, I
I can
understand.
imagine.
But um, they I was at home, and the only thing that I could do was go into the word, or I would get lost in my thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
I would just get so entangled into the what ifs and
Right.
why. And so I would just dive into the word and just text people and, get encouragement wherever I could get it. And God just showed me through devotions and scripture and people that He still loves me,
Right.
that
Wow.
He,
Yeah.
never stopped loving me, and that He is good, and that He does things for our good. And so one morning, I was in the word, and Romans 8:28 came to mind. And I kept asking, what is your purpose behind this, Lord? Why did this have to happen to me? And what do you want me to do with it? Like, what's next? And that's when that verse came to me. And we know that in all things, God works for the good who loves him and who are called according to his purpose. And I'm like, he's called me for greater things. He
Right.
had to take me on this journey because his glory needed to be shown. He needed people to see, and it needed, like, people needed to see this weak vessel, this person that he took down, weak vessel be brought to glory. It's all God. Like, everybody that sees this story can only see that God brought me from death to life, for a purpose. And the purpose is for me to share about him. And so that's kind of what lit a fire under me. And I was like, okay, all right, like let's do this. Let's do this. And so then it's just kind of created because I feel like my part in that is the wholeness of a person. So physically, emotionally, and spiritually,
Yeah.
because he took me on that journey, all three of them in like one instance, you know, he took me on this journey. And so now my job is to literally just encourage and empower other women, especially, but men as well, because hello, I have a lot of men in my life,
Yes, you do.
to live their best life in all of those areas. And all of those areas, when one of them is off, things are going to spin out of control. So we have to have them all physically, our mental well-being, and then most importantly, our spiritual well-being intact and working on every day.
Yes, beautiful, beautiful. So very quickly, very briefly, because this is your story, not theirs, but how are your boys and your husband, all those men in your life, how are they doing after
They're
all of
doing well. It was
that?
very traumatic for them. It was very, very hard. And some, they all handled it differently, but they all came together. And our family unit is even tighter because of it. And, I had 3 kids away at college, and they literally had to jump in the car and come.
Yeah,
And it was their first week of school, like that semester or whatever. And so it was hard. Um, they all, I think my community again is what got them through that. I
right.
had friends taking my son back to school shopping, I had all kinds of things. But today they are wonderful. They're all working on their own health journeys. They are all staying very active and eating as healthy as possible, and just doing the things. And I'm so proud of them for that.
Yeah,
We take it very serious. We all got hands only CPR trained. There's just important things that
right.
mean a lot more to us. Like, I wish everybody would be CPR and first aid certified. And if you're listening, go get it. Go
There
get
you go.
CPR certified.
Good.
But I think it's just changed our perspective, and we're just so thankful for every day, every gift, every memory, every moment that we have, because you just never know. You just never know.
Just never know. Oh,
Yeah.
Krista, I am so grateful for your time and for your story, but mostly I am just so grateful that you're still here and God is still writing your story for you to share with all of us.
Mhm.
So I thank you so much for coming today.
I have one more thing, if I can
Yeah,
say. So
absolutely.
I want to just leave with this little note. The most important thing you can tell is the story you tell yourself, the most important thing. And so if you remember that I'm going to say it again, the most important story you tell is the story you tell yourself. That you are capable, that you are able, that you are strong, you're loved, you are enough,
Yes,
and God is still writing your story. So speak life over yourself, and then you'll speak life over others. Remember to move your body wherever you're at today is good enough, but to keep going forward, keep moving forward.
absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you again so, so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining my podcast today and listening to the voices of those that have shared a part of their journey with you, their struggles, their successes, their hopes, their dreams, and their faith. Going through adversity in life can threaten our belief or be the greatest teaching. I pray, my friend, something spoke to you today. Was your soul nourished? Our souls are what make us uniquely human. It gives value and dignity to our lives. You have value and you are loved. I hope and pray you gained something that will help you navigate your way out of wherever you're stuck, renews your faith, and or moves you closer to God, to living out your true purpose, physically, spiritually, and emotionally. Whatever your journey, here's to healing in it, my friends. And I would love it if you would share with me, share with others, and please subscribe below.